notification came through at 4047 on a Thursday afternoon, and I had to read it 3 times before my brain actually processed the words. Effective immediately, Elena Vasquez has been promoted to senior associate. Congratulations, Elena. That was me. My name on the company-wide Slack. I stood in the elevator of our Houston office building, watching the little green notification bubble pulse on my screen, and I started laughing, this embarrassing, wet, overwhelmed laugh that I quickly swallowed because the doors opened on 3 and 2 paralegals from contract review were waiting to get on. I stepped out, nodded like a normal person, walked to the empty stairwell, and then I pressed my back against the cold concrete wall and let myself feel it. 6 years. 6 years of being the first one in and the last one to leave. 6 years of flying to depositions alone in cities where I didn't know anyone, of eating granola bars for dinner over discovery documents, of watching less qualified people get opportunities because they'd gone to the right school or played golf with the right partner. 6 years of my mother calling every Sunday asking if I was sure I wanted to keep doing this, honey, because you seem so tired. 6 years of my husband telling me to relax, that I was obsessive, that work wasn't everything. Senior Associate Harmon and Clegg. The track to partner. I texted my best friend from law school, Priya. Her reply came back in 11 seconds. I knew it. D ranks. Now, tonight. Do not go home first. I smiled at my phone. Then I pulled up my husband's contact and typed, I got it. The promotion. Senior Associate. Call me when you can. The reply took 40 minutes. 3 words, cool. Drive safe. I told myself he was in a meeting. I told myself he was busy. I had been telling myself these things for approximately 4 years, and I was very good at it. My husband's name was Trevor, and when I met him, we were both 26, and he was the most effortlessly charming person I had ever encountered. He coached youth baseball on weekends. He remembered every server's name at every restaurant we went to. He used to leave little notes in my car, not romantic notes, just funny observations, drawings of our dog, reminders that I was doing a good job. I fell hard and fast, and with complete confidence that I had found something real. We got married at 28. We bought a house in the Heights, a craftsman bungalow that needed work, that I was desperately in love with, and for a while it was good. It was genuinely, quietly good. Then his company downsized. Then he started a business with his college roommate that didn't take off. Then there was another idea, and another, and somewhere between the 3rd failed venture and the 4th, something shifted in the way Trevor looked at me. Not with pride, not with the warmth I used to know, with something that felt uncomfortably close to resentment. He was still charming in public, still remembered everyone's name, still coached on Saturdays. At home, he was a wall. I walked through the door that Thursday evening with a bottle of champagne I'd grabbed on impulse from a wine shop near the office. I was still in my suit. I was smiling in a way that made my face ache. The television was on, some game, the volume loud enough to feel it in my chest. Trevor was on the couch, with his feet up on the coffee table, a half-eaten bowl of cereal beside him. It was 7:30 p.m. Hey, I held up the champagne. I thought we could celebrate. He looked at me, then at the bottle. I'm watching something. I know, I just thought I set the champagne on the kitchen counter. It's kind of a big deal, Trev. Senior Associate, this is what I've been working toward. I know what it is. He turned back to the screen. Congrats. I stood in my own kitchen in my good blazer with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and felt, for just a moment, like an idiot. I put the champagne in the fridge. I changed out of my suit. I heated up leftover pasta and ate it standing over the sink while he watched his game, and I did not cry because I had learned that crying in front of Trevor produced one of 2 outcomes, contempt or performance, and I didn't want either. Later, around 11, he came to bed and said, "You know this is just going to make things worse, right?" I turned on the lamp. What does that mean? It means you're already never here. Now you'll be even less here. It means I've basically been living alone for 6 years, Elena. He said it without heat, which was somehow worse than anger. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying don't expect me to throw a party. I looked at the ceiling for a long time after he fell asleep. I had put 60% of the down payment on this house. I had covered the mortgage every single month for the past 2 years while his latest venture found its footing. I had paid for the new HVAC system and the kitchen renovation and the medical bills when he had that surgery last spring. I had done all of this without complaint because that was what partners did, and because I loved him, and because I believed that one day he would build something that worked and we would both exhale. I thought about what Priya had said once, a little too casually over a glass of wine. He doesn't hate your ambition, Elle. He just hates that it's working. I had defended him then. I wasn't sure I had the energy to do it anymore. His brother arrived on a Saturday. I had not been consulted. I had not been warned. I came downstairs at 8 in the morning to find a sleeping bag unrolled on our living room couch, and Trevor in the kitchen making eggs for 2, and he said very calmly, "Oh, Devin's staying with us for a bit. His roommate situation fell apart." I poured myself coffee and chose my words carefully. How long is a bit? Couple months, maybe? While he figures things out. Devin was 29. Devin had been figuring things out, as far as I could tell, since approximately 2017. He was not a bad person. He was actually kind of funny and occasionally helped with the dishes. But he had the peculiar ability to expand to fill whatever space he was given, and within 4 days, that space was my entire ground floor. His gaming setup appeared in the corner of the living room. His laundry migrated to the dryer and stayed there for 36 hours. He slept until noon and ate cereal at 2 p.m. and asked me, twice, if I could maybe work from my bedroom because he was on a call. I went to Trevor. I was calm. I was reasonable. I said, I need a timeline. I need to know what the plan is because I cannot do depositions at my kitchen table with your brother's headset in the background. Trevor said, he's family. He's going through something. Can you just not make this about you for 5 minutes? Make this about me. I turned the phrase over carefully, like a stone I'd found and wasn't sure was safe to pick up. I pay the mortgage on this house, Trevor. We're married. It's our house. Okay, then we should have made this decision together. That's how marriage works. He looked at me with that flat, evaluating look he'd developed over the past few years. The one that said I was being difficult, that I was too intense, that I needed to learn to go with the flow. Devin needs help. You want to turn him out because of your comfort level? What does that say about you? I walked back to my office and closed the door. I sat at my desk. I opened my laptop. I had a brief due by Thursday and 3 client calls before noon and a mentorship meeting with a junior associate who reminded me of myself 4 years ago. I had things to do. I also opened a new browser tab and looked up the name of a family law attorney that Priya had mentioned once. The way you mention things you hope you'll never need. Gwen Strickland, if you ever, and I'm sure you won't, but if you ever need someone in Texas. I didn't call. Not yet. I just saved the number. The money was the thing that broke the careful compartmentalization I had been maintaining. A month after Devin moved in, I logged into our joint savings to transfer funds for the property tax payment, Houston's quarterly curse, and found the balance $4,800 lower than it should have been. I sat very still for a moment. Then I pulled up the transaction history. A transfer 11 days ago to an account I didn't recognize. The memo line read, D. First Last Deposit. Trevor had paid for Devin's new apartment. The apartment Devin was theoretically moving into after figuring things out. He had done it without telling me, without asking, without acknowledging that the money in that account had come primarily from my paycheck for the past 3 years. I did not storm downstairs. I did not stain a furious text. I went into the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, and breathed until the red edge cleared from my vision. Then I went downstairs and I said, very quietly, you took $4,800 from our savings and gave it to your brother. Trevor was at the counter on his laptop. He didn't look up immediately. He needed help with the deposit. I had the access. You had the access. I repeated it back because I needed to hear how it sounded out loud. So did I. I've been putting money into that account for 3 years, while your last 2 businesses lost money and you withdrew nearly $5,000 without asking me. He looked up then. His jaw tightened. Elena, he's my brother. He was stuck. What was I supposed to do? Let him sleep on the couch forever? You were supposed to talk to me first. I shouldn't have to ask permission to help my own family. The word permission landed like a slap. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. He closed the laptop, and now his voice had that edge. Controlled, a little mean. You know what your problem is? You've been making more money than me for 2 years, and you've decided that means you're in charge. This is a marriage. I don't need to run every decision by you. Financial decisions that affect our joint account are joint account. Right. Except when it's convenient, it's your money that you've sacrificed for. Which is it? I had no good answer for that, because the truth was, it was both. And we both knew it, and neither of us could say so out loud without acknowledging what our marriage had actually become. I called Gwen Strickland the next morning. Gwen's office was in Midtown, on the 14th floor of a glass building with a view of downtown Houston that would have been beautiful if I hadn't been sitting across from her trying not to come apart. She was in her late 40s, unhurried. With reading glasses she kept taking on and off while she reviewed the notes she'd made during our intake call. She had the particular stillness of someone who had heard everything and was not going to pretend otherwise. "Tell me about the house," she said. I told her. Original purchase price. My down payment, 60%, documented, traceable. 3 years of mortgage payments from my account while Trevor's income was irregular. The renovation costs. The property taxes. She nodded, making notes. And the $4,800? Joint account. Primarily funded by my deposits over the past 36 months. He transferred it without my knowledge to pay his brother's apartment deposit. That's called dissipation of marital assets. She said it the way doctors say diagnoses. Not unkindly, but precisely. It's one of the factors courts look at in property division. Has this happened before? I thought about the loan to Devon's business 2 years ago. $2,000, never discussed, discovered 6 months later on a statement. The cost-sharing arrangement with Trevor's mother that I'd found out about third hand. Yes. Okay. She set down her pen. I want to be honest with you. Texas is a community property state, which means marital assets are generally divided 50-50 regardless of who earned what. But there are exceptions. Documented dissipation, waste, misuse, and what you're describing is a pattern. We can build a case around that pattern. She paused. I also want to ask you something. Has he ever? She let the question sit open. No. I said it fast. Then, slower, not physically, but the way he talks to me sometimes, when he decides I'm being difficult. I stopped. She looked at me over her glasses. Documented? I have texts, some voicemails. I thought about the ones I've been saving in a folder on my phone for the past few months, almost without deciding to. The way you save receipts you're not sure you'll need. Start organizing them by date. She slid a notepad across the desk. Here's what we're going to do. I didn't tell Trevor I'd seen a lawyer. I came home and made dinner and asked Devon how his job search was going and watched Trevor watch his game, and I acted completely normal, and inside I was building something. A new checking account at a different bank, opened on a Tuesday, direct deposit redirected by Friday. A spreadsheet, every mortgage payment I'd made in the past 3 years, cross-referenced with his bank deposits, pulled from statements I had saved in a personal cloud folder Gwen had told me to set up. Every renovation cost, the down payment transfer from my parents' account, the $2,000 Devon loan, the $4,800 withdrawal. Password changes, email, financial accounts, streaming services, everything. I did it methodically one night while Trevor was at his brother's new apartment helping him put together furniture. I did not feel guilty about any of this. I felt, if I'm being honest, calm in a way I hadn't been in years. The calm of someone who has finally decided to stop managing other people's behavior and start managing her own. The thing that complicated everything was that Trevor found the paperwork. I had been careful, but not careful enough. Gwen's retainer invoice, printed and then tucked into the back of a notebook I used for case notes. He went looking for a pen one evening and found the notebook and found the invoice. And when I came home from a late client dinner, he was sitting at the kitchen table with it in front of him. The look on his face was not anger at first. It was something rawer and more frightening. Genuine shock. Like he had genuinely not seen this coming. "You got a lawyer." His voice was quiet. I set my bag down. "Yes. You're divorcing me." "I'm understanding my options." That was what Gwen had told me to say, and I said it. The shock curdled. "You went behind my back. You hid money from me." He stood up. "After everything, you're going to sit there and say you're understanding your options? Our marriage is falling apart, and you're running some strategy behind my back like I'm opposing counsel." "Trevor, I have given up things for this marriage. I have supported you." "How?" The word came out before I could stop it. "Name something specific. In the last 2 years, name one concrete thing you have done to support me." The silence was very long. He couldn't. And I think some part of him knew, even as his jaw worked and his eyes went hard, that he couldn't. And that inability, that blank, terrible space where an answer should have been, was more honest than anything we had said to each other in 2 years. He slept in the guest room that night. He did not, as I had half expected, apologize in the morning. Devon was gone from our couch by the next weekend. I don't know what Trevor said to him, and I didn't ask. The gaming setup disappeared. The living room went back to normal. But Trevor didn't go back to normal. He went somewhere quieter and colder, and he started doing things that Gwen had told me to watch for, going through my car, checking the mail before I could get to it, questioning work trips I'd taken for years without incident. He went through my desk one afternoon. I came home to find drawers that had been opened and not quite closed the way I leave them. And when I asked him about it directly, standing in the kitchen with my arms crossed, he said he was looking for the car insurance documents, and his voice was smooth and flat and completely believable, and I might have believed him 6 months ago. "Any communication about the marriage goes through Gwen," she had told me. "Don't argue with him. Don't explain yourself. You are a black hole." I kept going to work. I kept closing cases. I kept putting one foot in front of the other. The moment things escalated was a Thursday evening in March. I had come home to get a box of files I needed for a Friday morning deposition. Documents, handwritten notes from an early case, irreplaceable things. The house was supposed to be empty. Trevor had said he was meeting a friend for dinner. He came home early. He walked in through the back door with Devon, who had apparently come along for the ride, and I was standing in the hallway with a box in my hands, and the three of us looked at each other in the particular frozen way of people who have found themselves in a scene they didn't rehearse. "What are you doing?" Trevor's voice was very even. "Getting my files. For tomorrow. Those are joint files. Everything in this house is joint property. These are my work documents, my case notes. They have nothing to do with our marital estate." Devon, to his credit, looked profoundly uncomfortable. He said, "Trev, maybe I'll wait outside. It's fine." Trevor did not look at his brother. He looked at me. "Set the box down." I did not set the box down. What happened next was fast and ugly and not what either of us planned. He reached for the box. I pulled back. There was a moment of genuine physical struggle. Not violent, not quite, but close. And then the box hit the edge of the door frame and I lost my grip and it crashed to the floor and the contents scattered. And in the chaos, my forearm caught the door handle and I heard a sound and felt a bright, sudden pain that told me something was wrong. I left. I drove myself to urgent care. Hairline fracture, they said. They splinted it and told me to follow up with orthopedics and asked how it happened. And I said I dropped a heavy box and tried to catch it, which was true enough. In the car outside the urgent care clinic, under the glow of the parking lot lights, I took a photograph of my forearm in its splint. Then I texted Gwen. He grabbed for something I was holding. I fell against the door. Urgent care. Hairline fracture. I have photos. Her reply came at 11:17 p.m. I'm filing for a protective order in the morning. Save everything. You did the right thing. The temporary restraining order changed the shape of things. Not because it stopped him. Men like Trevor don't stop because of paperwork. Not immediately, but because it took the conversation out of our hands and put it into a system that didn't care about his charm or my exhaustion. He was served at work because Gwen had specifically requested it, because visibility matters in ways that feel cruel until you understand why they're necessary. He called me 14 times the day he was served. I did not answer once. His mother called twice. Gwen had told me about this. The family will deploy, she'd said with the flat certainty of someone who has watched it happen many times. His mother's message was warm and wounded and framed my decision to consult a lawyer as an attack on her entire family, and she ended it by saying she hoped I knew that Trevor had always spoken so highly of me, and she just hoped I would remember what was important. I saved the voicemail. His brother texted from a new number. This is messed up, Elena. You know Hes not violent. You're going to ruin his life over ACC ident. I saved that too. The thing about having a lawyer you trust is that it allows you to be patient. I didn't have to respond to any of it. I didn't have to defend myself or explain or manage anyone's feelings. I could just work, sleep, take my vitamins and stretch my fractured arm and go to the office and close the Hartwell case that had been consuming my life for 8 months and receive on a quiet Wednesday morning an email from the managing partner with the subject line, Hartwell, exceptional work. Gwen filed for temporary orders. She also, in a move that made me slightly dizzy, filed for temporary spousal support, not because she thought I'd get it, but because it established, formally and in the public record, that I had been the primary financial support of our household while he pursued ventures that lost money. The characterization was accurate. Reading it in the filing was still jarring. Trevor's attorney, a man he'd found through a friend, sole practitioner, general practice, pushed back on everything. He called the fractured arm a misunderstanding. He called the $4,800 transfer a reasonable marital decision. He called my documentation of the previous withdrawals an invasion of privacy. The judge called the recording I hadn't known. I had the deciding factor. This is the thing I should explain. 3 months before everything came apart, Trevor and I had argued about money in the kitchen. A bad one. The kind where voices get low and controlled in a way that's worse than shouting. And at some point, I had set my phone on the counter and absent-mindedly pressed record on my voice memo app. I do this sometimes with important calls, out of reflex, and then forgotten about it. When Gwen asked me to go through my phone for anything useful, I found it. 12 minutes of audio. Trevor's voice, calm and methodical, explaining that my income was our income, that his decisions about where that money went were within his rights as my husband, that if I didn't like the arrangement, I was welcome to leave. But I shouldn't expect to take much with me because you didn't build this alone. You didn't build this alone. In a house where I had paid 60% of the down payment, covered 31 of the last 36 mortgage payments, and funded 3 years of his ventures. Gwen played it in the temporary orders hearing. She didn't even have to argue much after that. The judge, a woman in her 50s with the particular economy of movement that comes from having seen a great deal, looked at Trevor's attorney over her glasses and said very quietly, "Counselor, would you like to revise your position on the financial contributions?" Trevor's attorney said something about context. The judge said she'd heard enough context. The resolution took 4 months. It was not clean or painless. Trevor hired a second attorney after the first hearing, someone sharper, and the second attorney made several creative arguments about community property that Gwen dismantled with the patient efficiency of someone building a case for exactly this purpose. In the end, the house sold. Based on documented financial contribution, waste, and the pattern Gwen had built piece by piece over those 4 months, I received 68% of the net proceeds. He received 32%. It wasn't poetic, it was math. He also paid a portion of my attorney's fees, which the judge characterized as the cost of conduct. His attorney looked like a man who knew he'd been outgunned from the beginning. I was not there when the gavel came down. Gwen called me. I was in a client meeting and I stepped into the hallway and pressed the phone to my ear, and when she said we got it, I put my free hand flat against the cool drywall and just breathed. A year later, I had a 1-bedroom apartment in Montrose. Small, entirely mine, with a kitchen window that caught the morning light and a bookshelf that took up most of one wall and no one else's dishes in the drying rack. Priya called one Saturday morning while I was still in bed with coffee and a brief I'd been pretending to read. She said, "So I heard a thing." "What thing?" "Trevor's business. The new one. The roofing supply company. It folded, and apparently Devin got fired from that warehouse job for," she paused for effect, "stealing merchandise." I thought about this. I felt something, but it wasn't satisfaction exactly. It was more like the specific exhaustion of watching something inevitable happen exactly the way you always knew it would. Is Trevor okay? Does it matter? I thought about that too. No, I guess it doesn't. You sound very evolved, Priya said. I sound tired, I said. But the good kind. I had May partner, not at Harmon and Clegg. There had been some restructuring, some politics, the usual. But at a smaller firm, Delacroix and Partners, where I'd been recruited 6 months after the divorce. Litigation. My name was on the door. Literally, on the door. I had stood in the lobby on my first day and looked at it and felt something I still don't have a clean word for. The senior partner was a woman named Frances, 63, with a laugh like a foghorn and the sharpest legal mind I'd encountered in a decade of practice. She had looked at my file and said, "You've been carrying other people's weight for a long time. Don't do that here. We'll carry it together." I had not cried in a professional setting in 6 years. I was close that day. There was also a person. His name was James. He was a structural engineer who worked 2 floors below me in the same building, and we had met in the elevator in the most cliched way possible. He'd held the door when I was running late, and I'd said thank you, and he'd said rough morning, and I'd said they're all rough, and he'd laughed like that was actually funny, and I'd thought, oh, James didn't need me to be smaller. He didn't score the silences between us. He read the same bad thrillers I read and cooked better than I did, and, crucially, when I told him about the divorce, not the version I told in polite company, but the real one, the $4,800 and the box of files and the urgent care parking lot, he had listened without flinching and then said, "I'm glad you got out," and not one word more. No unsolicited opinions. No reframing my choices. Just, "I'm glad you got out." I thought about that for a long time afterward. There is something I've understood in the past year that I couldn't have articulated before. The version of love I learned to accept from Trevor was the version that required me to keep apologizing for taking up space, for earning, for wanting things, for being, in his words, so intense. And I had done it. I had shrunk, and apologized and explained myself and paid the mortgage and told myself this was what partnership looked like for so long that I genuinely couldn't see the shape of it while I was inside it. I see it clearly now. I got a call from an unknown number on a Tuesday morning in January. I almost let it go. Something made me answer. Elena. Trevor's voice, and it was so altered, hollow, quieter, stripped of the careful management I'd known for years, that it took me a full second to recognize it. I know I shouldn't be calling. A long pause. The business closed, and Devin's in some legal trouble, and I've been trying to help him, His voice broke on something. I made a lot of mistakes. I know that. I just wanted to say that. I wanted you to know I know. I stood by my kitchen window in the January morning light, and I listened to him. This man I had loved and lived alongside for 8 years, unraveling on the other end of the line. And then I said, as gently as I could, Trevor, you shouldn't be contacting me. The agreement has a non-disparagement clause, and I think this call probably I know. His voice went flat. I know. I know what you wanted. I softened it as much as I could, but I can't give it to you. I hope things get better for you. I mean that, but this is the last time I can take this call. I hung up. I stood with my phone in my hand for a moment. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sad. I felt present. Here in my kitchen, in the morning light, in the life I had built with my own hands, after the life I'd thought I was building turned out to be somebody else's. There's a woman at my firm, a first year, 25 years old, who came to me last month about a situation at home. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. I recognized the particular careful way she chose her words, the reflexive softening of every sentence, the way she kept looking at the door. I closed my office door. I took out a notepad. I wrote down a name, Gwen Strickland. 14 years of family law, Midtown Houston. I slid it across the desk and said, you don't have to do anything with this, but if you ever need it, she's who I'd call. She folded it once and put it in her jacket pocket without looking at it. I knew that gesture. I had made that gesture. Sometimes that's how it starts, with a name on a piece of paper and the quiet, durable knowledge that you have options. That someone before you took the map and made it out, and they're sitting across from you right now telling you, the terrain is hard, but it is passable. You're going to be okay. I used to think that the hardest thing about leaving was the leaving itself. The paperwork, the apartment search, the first night alone in a place that didn't have any of his things in it. I was wrong. The hardest thing was the years before, the slow, quiet erosion of knowing my own worth, while I kept showing up and paying the mortgage and telling myself this was just a rough patch, that things would balance out, that love meant absorbing what you couldn't fix. They didn't balance out, and I think somewhere deep down I knew that. I just wasn't ready to act on what I knew. What I've come to understand, not from a book, not from anyone's advice, but from living through it, is that the choices we make when no one is watching are the ones that actually define us. Trevor made his choices too. The $4,800 transfer. The decision to move Devin in without a conversation. The way he reached for that box. None of those were accidents or misunderstandings. They were a man revealing, slowly and then all at once, exactly who he was and what he believed I was worth. People show you. It just takes honesty. Real, uncomfortable honesty with yourself, to see it clearly. That honesty is the thing I had to build from scratch, not cleverness, not strategy, though Gwen's strategy didn't hurt, but the basic moral courage to look at a situation that was hurting me and say, this is wrong and I deserve better and I am going to do something about it. I had to get honest about the money I was carrying, honest about the dismissals I had explained away, honest about the fact that I had been making myself smaller year by year to fit into a life that was never actually built for two. And then I had to think clearly. That's the part people underestimate. Leaving a bad situation isn't just emotional, it requires you to think, to document, to understand what you're legally entitled to and what can be proven and what a recorded voice memo from your own kitchen is worth in a courtroom. I am a lawyer. I had some advantage there, but the principle holds for anyone. Clarity of mind, even when your heart is a wreck, is what turns pain into action. It's what turned my grief into 68% of the net proceeds and my name on a new door. And then there's the part that nobody talks about, which is that after the honesty and the clear thinking, you still have to get up every morning and keep going. The hearing doesn't end it. The signed settlement doesn't end it. There were weeks where I sat in my Montrose apartment and felt the particular loneliness of having made the right call and still having to live with all the loss that came with it. Grit. The stubborn, unglamorous kind is what got me through those weeks. Not optimism, just one more day, one more case, one more morning with good coffee and the light coming through the kitchen window. I think about the first-year associate I slid Gwen's name to. I think about the careful way she folded that paper and put it in her pocket without looking at it. I recognized that gesture because it was mine. Once. The gesture of someone who isn't ready yet but is quietly, privately collecting the information she might need when she is. I don't know what she'll do with it. That's not mine to know. What I know is that I got out, and I built something real on the other side, and when Trevor called from wherever he was to tell me he was sorry, I felt nothing that required me to stay on the line. That's not coldness. That's what it looks like when the account is finally settled and you're free to go.